when I give my students a task that is outside of the box or outside of the norm or outside of the way that they have done it, it's really, really hard for them.
And you've noticed that get worse?
I haven't noticed it get any better, that's for sure.
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Newman Experience, where Maureen and I get together and we discuss a topic regarding the pillars of health, right? So I just finished a book, right, by Yuval Noah Harari. He wrote Sapiens, I Like Sapiens, and his latest book, 21 Questions for the 21st Century, is all about 21 questions for the 21st century, right? Like what life is going to look like in the future and down the road. And I was trying to find a good little starting off point. So I was looking online and I found this little article on the first thing I popped up when I searched Yuval Noah Harari about the topic we're going to talk about. And it says, basically, technological innovation and artificial intelligence are going to accelerate at a pace we've yet to really comprehend. He says, 15 years ago, Facebook wasn't even around. Now it's so efficient at micro-targeting that it can help sway democratic elections. Imagine what it might be capable of in another 15 years. That means automation will likely disrupt your current job, and your next one, and the one after that, and you'll be the target of attention-grabbing, behavior-modified algorithms so exponentially effective you won't even realize you're being targeted. The best defense against that question mark? An emotional flexibility that allows for constant reinvention and knowing yourself well enough that you don't get drawn into the deep internet traps that set up for you. All right, so that I know in his book he talks mostly about artificial intelligence and technology coming and disrupting things. But with COVID and quarantine and all that, right, and some places no longer being open, that really piqued my interest about disruption in our lifestyles, right? So who better to talk about this with than you, right? Because the emotional flexibility. Tell me what you know about that.
Emotional flexibility. So flexible, we talk at home with the boys.
But
a lot about flexible thinking.
Your background is in what?
Education.
And you focused on this stuff, right?
So a lot of, so the course that I teach at Endicott is integrating technology in the classroom. So it's all about sort of moving classrooms into the 21st century, or at least that's what I attempt to do in the class. And we spend a lot of time talking about how the way that we were educated, the way that we were brought up, and a lot of practices that are still existing today don't match with what's happening in society. Right? We are still educating our students in a similar fashion to the way we did 50 years ago, when the world was completely different, when it was okay for I don't want to say it was okay to have black or white thinking, but it was a little bit easier to sort of have a way of doing things, have a job, have a career, have practices that you didn't have to really reflect on and change that much.
And I think the systems for all of society was relatively similar. Right?
It's kind of like the status quo.
You went to, there was a generation that you go through high school, you got your high school degree, and then you got your job, and then you work from ages 20 to 60, and then you retire or something. And then now we're starting to hit a phase where we're the generation that you can't just get your high school degree, you have to go to college too, and then you get your debt, and then you end up paying that off until a certain age, and then you end up retiring. And then, the future really holds and we're seeing that right now, the only thing that we know for certain is that there will be more uncertainty in people's lives as they go forward.
And I think, one of the biggest changes, and you sort of alluded to it, is you go to high school, you get your job, and then once you have that job, it's pretty predictable.
And you stay in it for a long time. It used to be
very predictable. But what is happening now, largely due to technology, largely due to social media, everything is in a constant evolution.
Yep.
And if you're not evolving with it,
Yep.
then you're being left behind.
Yeah, because there's a good amount of people that probably won't end up getting their life job back after they return back to, or once COVID really releases its hold on a lot of restrictions.
Yeah, things are going to be different, and if you can't find a way to, I think we saw that in the beginning of quarantine too.
Mhm.
Like the businesses that were really able to be flexible thinkers,
Yep.
and sort of think outside of the box. And all right, we have this problem in front of us. How am I going to work around it, rather than there's nothing I can do about it? Those are the businesses that were able to sort of stay relative and
So
stay alive.
what would you categorize as traits of a flexible thinker? What is flexible thinking, and what are traits of a good flexible thinker?
So flexible thinking,
Or actually, like in your students, right? What traits do they have that when you're looking at them, when you're grading their stuff, that you're like, ooh, this person's got it?
I don't see that very much.
What would you be looking for? There's been a handful over your years that you're like, this one's good.
It's being able, I think, to look at your own experiences, the way that you've always done things,
Yeah.
and to be self-aware enough to know that that approach doesn't match the current situation.
Yep. And being vulnerable enough to
admit that, and then do something different about it.
Yep. Okay, so being self-aware enough that what you're doing isn't working, being vulnerable enough to admit that,
Yep.
and then also having tools to develop a new strategy.
Yes.
So habit start, like people that could create their own habits, well, that don't necessarily, and we talked about this, John can pop up a little image of our habit formation page we put together, but the keys of creating good habits, right? Like the cue is what starts a habit, right? So people that can cue themselves, that don't require other people and other things to be.
I'm gonna keep going.
All right,
Okay.
so Teddy, that we're not just training the kids, we're also training the adults.
In what sense? What do you mean?
Like the kids obviously have to learn these strategies, but most of the adults don't even have these strategies themselves.
Yeah, and I think it's something, I don't want to say that we've never needed before, but it was more of a, more reserved for like particular industries to be innovative.
All right, so what are some of those industries that promote that compared to others that don't?
I think anything like computer science, coding, design, like some of more of those creative based industries, as opposed to say like education. Right? It's a system, and we've always followed that same system, and because education is so strange because everybody has experienced it, they feel like what they went through was okay. It's like a common experience.
That is weird, right?
Do you know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, that like just because we all did it, that's the way it's supposed to be, and always supposed to be there. Yeah.
Yeah, but there's not a lot of, or there hadn't been a lot of that self-reflection.
It would make sense for jobs to be flexible thinking,
Yeah.
right? Or industries to be flexible thinking. I mean, that's what causes a lot of industries to end up failing anyways, right? Because they're unable to be flexible about their thinking.
And that's
They
what I
get
think.
stale.
You know, there's a lot of factors that unfortunately contributed to businesses not being able to survive during this time. But some of it, I think, is probably,
The lack of flexible thinking.
sort of that one size fits all approach. This is how I've always done it. This is how I'm going to continue to do it. And there's nothing I can do about all of these outside circumstances.
Yeah. But there is something that you can do.
There could be, yes.
So what are those that you can do?
So I think it starts with Flexible thinking, like we were saying, is that self-awareness.
Mm-hmm.
And then it comes down to, do you have problem-solving strategies? Do you have complex problem-solving strategies?
What age are those supposed to be developed?
I think as early as possible.
And what percent of people do you think have those that you see in school?
Not a lot. I don't know that I could put a percentage on it, but what I can say is that working in higher education, when I give my students a task that is outside of the box or outside of the norm or
Mm-hmm.
outside of the way that they have done it, it's really, really hard for them.
And you've noticed that get worse?
I haven't noticed it get any better, that's
Yeah.
for sure. They're looking for a very prescribed way to do things, an example to follow, a model.
Yep.
Really clear and specific guidelines.
Which is essentially what a computer does anyways. So they're going to be eaten up by computers.
Yeah.
Unless they are problem solvers to work with technology going forward and
Yeah.
work with changing times. So there's not many kids where do you think that stems from?
I think it stems from the way that we've all gone through school.
Just school or parents too?
And I think some of it, yes. Yeah, some of it comes from the home as well. We, as parents, I think sometimes subtly reinforce messages that are detrimental to their flexible thinking.
Like what?
All in good intentions of, math always comes to mind for me because I always struggled with math.
Mm-hmm.
And I just assumed it was something that I wasn't good at.
Yep.
So when we sort of take that, if we see our own children struggling, if we're reinforcing that message of, it's just not your strength, or, yeah, math is hard, or this problem is really hard, as opposed to, oh, this is a good challenge.
Yeah.
Or we talk a lot at home, about the power of yet.
The power of what?
The power of yet.
Oh, yes. I
Yeah.
know the power. Yes.
You know
I
the
was
power of
confused
yet.
as to what you meant by the power of yet. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know that yet.
I don't know that yet. I don't know how to do that yet.
Yes. But that's the power of yet.
I can't read that book
Yeah.
yet.
So the kids will say, I can't read. No, you can't read yet.
You can't read that
Or
yet.
you can't do that problem. No, you can't do that problem yet. Right?
Yeah.
And that, is a style of problem solving, right?
Yeah.
The yet, because that is a problem that they will end up overcoming at some point.
And I think it just very subtly communicates that, yeah, you might not be able to do it now, but when you're ready,
Mm-hmm.
there's strategies, there's tools that are going to help you figure out how to do that problem.
Yeah. Yeah, there's always new strategies.
Yeah.
And even as adults can, a lot of what adults we see is, or I see in the office, is adults that never had those strategies.
Because you didn't necessarily have to.
Yeah, you never had to.
The world didn't change at such exponential rates
Mm-hmm.
historically as it does now. There was great technological advances, but the consistency and the speed to which that happens these days, it's incredible.
Well, this statistic right here, let me see, where did it go? It says, some studies show that in the year 2025, so just in 5 years, 60% of the jobs will be taken over by other things. They'll be done a completely different way.
Yeah.
So that means that says there have been a couple of rough years in which people have to retrain. They'll have to retrain, and new jobs will appear. And some people don't find new jobs, and you have a large problem of unemployment, right? So even these kids coming out of school, like, it's growing so fast or changing so fast that these kids are going in for 4 years of education, and by the time they get out, their career is completely different than what they thought it was going to be.
Well, and education is the perfect example of that right now.
That it should, yeah.
There's no one in their right mind as a teacher who ever thought they would have to teach from their home without their students physically present in front of them.
Yeah.
And it has thrown the world of education
Upside down
into a frenzy. And I think our teachers are obviously figuring it out now, but
Some.
they never, we as educators never had to think about that, or never had to really evolve our practice in such drastic ways.
Mm-hmm.
But that, I think, is going to be a new normal.
Yeah. I mean, the people that are able to make a change now, or are willing to try to make a change now, I mean, I know we keep going back and forth, like we said, from COVID to school, but COVID has really been a catalyst that shows everyone, like, hey, you've got to be able to be flexible going forward, because hopefully nothing like this happens in the future, but the world around us is shifting on a pretty regular basis. One of the reasons why this whole talking point came up to me was because I've been getting a lot of patients into the office now that, because the big gyms such as Latitude or Boston Sports Club are no longer open, patients are having a very hard time separating their exercise from their socializing, right? So I continue to tell patients that it is possible, actually, right, to separate your gym experience, which was social and exercise together. That it's possible to get your social satisfaction from someplace else while get your exercise from or your movement from another thing, right? So you might have to separate them and go two different routes to satisfy both those. But I have many patients that are truly unable to separate those two, right? And I mean, it's a bummer to see, right? Because that's something that, I mean, it should be, I mean, there are tons of options out there, so it should be easy to separate them, but it's so hard for many patients too.
Because in order to do that, you have to, again, be self-aware, and you have to really look at yourself and look at the behavior and what's the function of that behavior.
Yeah.
Why are you going to the gym? I mean, there's never really been a time in our lives where we've had to really analyze every decision we make, everything that we do, to try to find its purpose and try to reproduce that purpose in a different way.
So what are ways for people to become a little more self-aware of those things? Teddy, what you got? Minecraft cards.
And now Teddy joins us.
We're going to wrap it up. Yeah. All right. So all in all, the flexible thinking is one of the more valuable traits that you can create going forward. Right?
Can I interrupt for 1 second?
Yeah.
Because I just thought of something too. It's not just valuable or like a nice to have.
It's a necessity.
It's a necessity, and it's one of, if you look at like the World's Economic Forum or whatever, they always put out like the top 10 qualities that employers are looking for. And it's not academic intelligence, it's not skill, it's flexible thinking.
Do they call it flexible thinking?
I've seen emotional thinking.
Emotional thinking?
Flexible thinking, it's complex. Problem solving, it's empathy, it's adaptability.
Yeah.
So it's all of these life skills, or sometimes in school we call them soft skills, but it's all about those character traits as opposed to your skill level.
Yep. So those character traits are more necessary than your skill level going forward in life.
Yeah, and I think we've hopefully done a good job sort of explaining why it's so important. And I think you're right. I think coronavirus has really forced us to examine that much more closly. Yeah,
and like we said, it's not, hopefully, and I don't know if it will ever happen again, but a virus and disruption to this extent, this quickly, hopefully won't happen again in our lifetime. But it's definitely, it definitely gives us an eye-opening experience of, hey, maybe we should pay a little more attention to creating some better strategies, because there are going to be small-scale things like this that take place over the course of our lifetime. Unless you're already in your 80s, right, you're going to see many changes. And even if you're in your 80s, I mean, you still got some good years left, right?
Yeah.
And stuff's changing fast. So it'll be valuable no matter what. What you doing, Teddy?
All right, Teddy's done.
Teddy's done. All right, guys. So thanks for sticking around. Hopefully that one was some valuable information. Make sure to subscribe below and turn the notifications on. Leave us comments, right? So we know what more to talk about. We're able to see viewer counts and stuff like that, but we want to see what people like. All right, take care.